Coming up on We Talk News this week, Vice President Kamala Harris on ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live, and the host has news for her.
Are you aware that there is a strain of cannabis named after you, Kamala Kush? Did you know that? Yeah.
Seriously,
for real.
I did not know that.
You didn't know it? They didn't even send you any?
No.
Oh, that's outrageous.
Michigan is the new #1 cannabis market in terms of products sold, knocking California off the top spot in that category, while the Golden State still drives the most revenue in the country. And the next steps towards rescheduling cannabis, now back in the hands of the DOJ as the federal government prepares to ease restrictions on the plant. MSO Green Thumb Industries offers Boston Beer a chance for collaboration or merger. Is this just the beginning of other industry mergers with big alcohol and cannabis? Or is it just a strategy to get GTI on the U.S. Stock Exchange? Plus, politics making no sense in the state of Florida, where their governor, Ron DeSantis, supports hemp-derived intoxicants while continuing to fight the adult use initiative on the fall ballot. Can someone please explain to him it's the same plant? And speaking of Florida, Trulieve opens up its 200th dispensary to become the biggest cannabis operator in the country. Perpetual drones highlight the sky at the second annual Flower Expo in the Bay State as the expo celebrates the cannabis industry in Massachusetts with hundreds of vendors, record crowds, decision makers, and a majority of the state dispensaries on hand. We talk with that show's organizer, Jason Bello, on location at the Franklin County Fairgrounds.
Absolutely, and thank you, by the way, Jimmy. You're one of my favorite guys to talk to.
All that and coast-to-coast cannabis news on We Talk News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Weed Talk News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of cannabis news from coast to coast. I'm Alaina Pinto. The fallout continues from the 2024 Farm Bill passed by the House, but that industry continues to stand firm on leaving the definition of hemp the same at 0.3% THC. In a special edition of Weed Talk News this week, the CEO and founder of Cornbread Hemp out of Louisville, Kentucky, Jim Higdon, talked with Washington State's Matthew Friedlander, Oregon's Marianne Kersagi, and PCM founder Jimmy Young.
Are you concerned about the future of the hemp industry based on what you're hearing coming out of Washington, D.C.?
I'm not concerned about the future of the hemp industry because I believe what happened in the Farm Bill and the House Ag Committee is not going to ever become final law. Long way for it to go. And the only thing that the backers of this amendment had working for them was the element of surprise, and they have shot that bullet. And now that people are aware of what they were trying to pull in the Farm Bill, I don't think that it will ever see the light of day. So I'm not at all concerned about it, how it's going to end up. It's very frustrating right now in the midst of it and having to divert our attention to fighting it on Capitol Hill. But I'm certain that when the dust settles, we will be victorious, and these people who are trying to recriminalize THC and hemp will fail.
Higdon is a member of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, and the entirety of that special Weed Talk News show is available on procannabismedia.com, our website, and our YouTube channel. Meanwhile, the DOJ in Washington, D.C. continues to prepare for the move of cannabis to Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substances Act, while the public comment period continues. Green Market Report shared that in the first week of public comments, 97% were positive, and the move to Schedule 3 is expected to be adopted. But only 11,000 comments in the first 2 weeks from the entire cannabis community. Pro Cannabis Media will continue to share the link that takes you directly to the comments section, so share yours. You can tell your cannabis story to the DEA. The comment period continues until July 22nd. But even when that closes, there are conflicting reports on how long it might take to implement the changes. The biggest one is, of course, getting rid of that unjust 280E clause that doesn't allow the cannabis industry to take standard business deductions that every other business in America can. Removing that unfair tax burden on a billion-dollar industry will open up revenue margins for many dispensaries, growers, and manufacturers. That will take a lot of financial pressure off companies that have been crippled by federal laws and state compliance and regulations. Washington, D.C. typically slows down for the summer, but that doesn't seem to be the case this year. The DOJ has begun the process to reschedule cannabis. The House approved a spending bill allowing the VA to recommend medical cannabis, and the DoD may soon stop testing recruits for the plant medicine. Plus, a GOP House committee just dropped a major spending bill that does not include an old rule blocking Washington, D.C. from adult use sales. They've also thrown in some extra banking protections for cannabis businesses. Andrew Behringer is keeping up with all the news from our nation's capital.
I'm Andrew Behringer, and this is the DC Area Report for We Talk News. The House of Representatives has approved amendments to the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and related agencies' fiscal year 2024 appropriations bill. The amendments brought by the Congressional Cannabis Caucus co-chairs would allow veterans to participate in state legal medical cannabis programs without facing barriers from the Department of Veterans Affairs. The amendment was approved in a vote 290 to 116. Under the current status quo, VA doctors are limited in the treatment options they can offer to veteran patients, while non-veterans can readily access these treatments in many states. Representative Earl Blumenauer, who is set to retire later this year, expressed disappointment that the VA is trapped in time and not giving veterans the full benefits of medical cannabis. Similar, VA-focused cannabis provisions were approved last year in both the House and the Senate, but ultimately failed to reach the final version of the bill. Now, in other news, a GOP-led House committee is proposing to prohibit military branches from testing recruits for cannabis as part of the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act. The House Armed Service Subcommittee on Military Personnel released recommended language containing the cannabis provision. Now, the DoD previously told lawmakers that Delta-9 THC is the most common substance appearing on positive drug tests for active duty military service members. Now, looking at DC news, a GOP House committee chaired by Representative Dave Joyce out of Ohio has introduced a large-scaling spending bill that excludes a long-standing rider blocking Washington, D.C. from legalizing adult-use cannabis sales. The bill also includes new protections for banks that will work with state legal cannabis businesses. The removal of DC cannabis sales ban is notable as it has been consistently maintained in budget proposals even by President Joe Biden. I'm Andrew Behringer reporting for We Talk News.
California is still the king of the cannabis market when it comes to revenue. Last year, the state reported $5.1 billion in taxable sales, which is the number one state for sales and revenue. However, for the first time, the state of Michigan has sold more products than California. And now there are 39 million people in the Golden State and only 10 million in Michigan. But that state can claim that there are number one in total products sold. They are number one in total products sold. As if losing the cannabis product sales grown to Michigan isn't enough, there's more bad news for California. New data from BDSA this week shows California's legal cannabis market started the year slowly. In fact, they are reporting their worst quarter of revenue since the second quarter of 2020. Industry expert Hirsch Jane said the Golden State has, quote, squandered the legal cannabis opportunity and that the state's entire market is, quote, on the verge of collapse. Here's our California cannabis expert, Lavana Vassaw, with the Golden State Cannabis Report.
I'm Lavana Vassaw from the Bay Sesh, reporting for PCM with this week's California Report for We Talk News. As you may have figured out by now, I am very proud of my California roots. Sure, sales dropped again, but there has been an adjustment in the market that has been caused by the changes in the laws and tighter regulations regarding testing. So many major MSOs have vacated or even failed, like MedMen. So while the Michigan can claim a win for the amount of different products sold, California is still the queen of the cannabis industry because in any business, it's always about the bottom line. And the Golden State continues to dominate on the revenue front. And I may as well have a segment called Who's Suing Who this week. Well, this week it's John Doe via the County of Marin versus Steezy, one of the most popular vape brands in the state and country. This John Doe has chosen to remain anonymous while Marin County is accusing the brand of marketing its high-potency products to young people and being responsible for the rise of cannabis-induced psychosis amongst teenagers. In other news, the feds put out a warning about products on shelves containing Delta 8 THCO, which is a hemp-derived synthetic THC that was not included in the 2018 Farm Bill because it really didn't exist back then. And some companies have created an entire industry around this loophole. After the feds made an official announcement about Delta 8 THCO not being legal last fall, the Delta 8 industry has been getting a shakedown. On May 30th, the California Department of Public Health issued a notice about Mary Jones's Sodas, a Seattle-based drink company with infused THC drinks. These sodas are manufactured in Michigan and sold at Total Wine & More, a Maryland-based American beverage retailer. The announcement said, quote, "The California Department of Public Health is warning consumers not to drink Jones's hemp-infused soda, which have been identified as containing prohibited THC isolate ingredients. Industrial hemp products are legal in California, but are prohibited under the state law from containing THC isolates." Governor Gavin Newsom directed the CDPH and the California Department of Alcohol, Beverage, and Control to issue notices. This announcement also mentioned that at the time, the Jones Soda Company had ignored the recall despite them being notified a month prior to the May 30th announcement. The SF Gate reported that Total Wine & More has not removed the THC drinks from their website product offerings. California police are officially the most chill in the country. Over the past few weeks, they've announced their support of legalizing cannabis. Back in May, a group of 80,000 police officers from an association of 950 police unions officially announced their support of the state's 2.0 Act. The federal bill would amend the Controlled Substance Act. It would protect people in compliance with legal states. It would also add protection of the indigenous market and authorize interstate commerce to begin, while calling for a currently unspecified federal tax on cannabis sales to support regulations and enforcement. I'm Alaina Pinto from the Bay Sesh reporting for Pro Cannabis Media with this week's California report for Weed Talk News. And perhaps the biggest story in California this week is the VP Kamala Harris's appearance on the Jimmy Kimmel Show.
It was in a category with heroin. Now it's in a category with like steroids and things that people use regularly. That's good, I assume.
Well, look, I think we both agree. People shouldn't have to go to jail for smoking weed. There was a time when people would say, well, marijuana is a gateway drug.
Yes.
And these were failed policies, right? The resources should be better directed and will be better directed to deal with opioid addiction, and what we need to do around fentanyl, getting more resources into mental health and mental health care, right?
Do you know
That's
that
the smarter way.
Are you aware that there is a strain of cannabis named after you, Kamala Kush? Did you know that? Yeah.
Seriously.
Seriously, for
I
real.
did not know that.
You didn't know it? They didn't even send you any?
No.
Oh, that's outrageous. You'd think you would get that.
Another part of the stigma that the cannabis industry faces on a daily basis is that cannabis legalization and the opening of dispensary stores results in a decline in property values. A new study by a real estate data company discovers that it has the exact opposite effect on property values. Research collected by the real estate data company Tomo shows in the counties where dispensaries are opening around the country in 24 legal states, and that there was a 2% increase in property values. When shops are put in distressed areas, new economic zones build up around them, increasing property values even more. So maybe that will help the folks in South Dakota pass adult use this fall, now that it's officially on the ballot this coming November. Don't get too excited about that possibility. It was a few years ago that adult use was voted in, only to be shut down by their prohibition governor, Kristi Noem. Now let's go west to Oregon with Marianne Kersagi.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. This week, Jimmy Kimmel, yes, that Jimmy Kimmel, asked VP Kamala Harris about the cannabis strain called Kamala Kush. She was surprised to hear about it. Oregon-based farm Alibi Cannabis released a limited edition of this strain a couple of years ago. So excited to see Jimmy Kimmel talking about cannabis. VP Harris is known for her anti-cannabis stance, but hopefully she is more open to conversations about the benefits of cannabis. Next, Portland's Willamette Week published an article this week discussing the possible impact of rescheduling on Oregon's cannabis industry. Reporter Brianna Wilson discussed the potential for more research, possible banking reforms, and medical insurance coverage. All of this is, in quotes, ambiguous and speculative, according to Steve Rogers at Theorem. And finally, stay tuned next week as the director of the OLCC meets with the Oregon Trade Association, CHOW. That's the Oregon Cannabis Report for this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
In New York, there is more confusion and frustration. The resignation of a key regulator and the state-mandated audit of the Office of Cannabis Management has made a difficult situation even worse. Friday is Chris Alexander's last day as executive director of the OCM, leaving a void in leadership. Add in the fact that social equity administrator Damian Fagan continues to be on forced leave for his actions in the Jenny Loves recall, and that there has not been one communique from the Office of Cannabis Management since May 10th. New Yorkers continue to wonder how and why this happened. Well, that'll do it for the A Block. But remember, you can always check out the entire show on the homepage of procannabismedia.com's website, or wait until we release the B Block on Tuesdays on our YouTube channel. In the next part, the B Block, you have to check out what is going on in the state of Florida. Their governor, Ron DeSantis, continues to fight against the adult use initiative that is on the ballot in November. But now DeSantis is supporting the unregulated THCA and Delta-8 products derived from hemp. We'll explain the situation in Florida next on Weed Talk News.